Mame fa na se ma PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV de osia dem yopo.
Yemu bibia akwaba eba PENDREAM TV. Dr. Elvis Bota Eddie and Twembe Eltuja Awachese US President Joe Biden removed Cuba from list of state sponsors of terrorism. Na Osaka and Sembi Awachese Joe Biden is behaving in similar manner as former President Nana Adadankwa Akufo-Addo behaved. And Sembi kawe huna Dr. Elvis Bota Eddie Eltuja bepeso beka me honeti ni nsem no entirimu. Na nsa na bekono. Subscribe to channel no, like na share jumadi nima afofro ensa enkabi. Comment section honso na ode wadwenche aba. Yenti ensema Dr. Elvis Bota Eddie Eltuja.
Let's get into the conversation without further ado. However, Honorable Yunus Afuseni of the NDC will be joining us. It's my fervent hope that he's on his way and then will be with us shortly. But we'll start the conversation regardless. Once he joins us, he'll pick it from there. US President Joe Biden removes Cuba from list of state sponsors of terrorism. At last, this is something that we have been waiting for. United States President Joe Biden has announced that he will remove Cuba from the U.S.'s list of state sponsors of terrorism in his final days as president, reversing Donald Trump's addition of Cuba to the list in 2021. The Biden administration said on Tuesday, January 14, that this move is meant to facilitate the release of individuals detained in Cuba. I transmit here with a report to the Congress with respect to the proposed rescission of Cuba's designation as a state sponsor of terrorism, Biden announced. Countries are added to the U.S. state sponsors of terrorism list by the State Department that have allegedly, repeatedly provided support for acts of acts of international terrorism, I beg your pardon. In practice, however, those countries include on the list Cuba, North Korea, Syria, and Iran. They are all nations that have refused to toe the U.S.'s line of foreign policy, while highly controversial nations such as Saudi Arabia are excluded from such a list. It's a long story. Now, Trump is the incoming president. And so I want to find out, is there a possibility that he will undo what Joe Biden is doing in his last days of office?
Well, Joe Biden is behaving in similar manner as former President Nana Adadankwa Akufo-Addo behaved. President Akufo-Addo, even in the last 2 hours to, exiting office, proceeded on a diplomatic blunder on the issue of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic, a major foreign policy trajectory for Ghana's diplomatic relations with external countries. That is not too different from what Joe Biden have just done few days to leaving office. But the reality is that indeed the tenure of office of these presidents does not come to an end until it comes to an end. So until, Trump is brought back to swear the oath of allegiance and the oath of presidency to the people of America, Biden remains president and is at liberty democratically to act as such. And so I don't see anything fundamentally wrong. In fact, this is long overdue, in my opinion, because the decision finds itself in total alignment with international consensus. International consensus in the sense that we all know that there have been protracted diplomatic issues between America and Cuba. Bless, if you do recall, this dates back to the Cuban Revolution. In fact, in 1961, there is what we students of international relations will appreciate as the Peak Bay invasion, which was closely followed by the October crisis, otherwise called the Cuban Missile Crisis. And so there are deep-rooted historical, issues that must be considered when talking about the United States of America on the one hand and its relationship with Cuba on the other hand. And so all of these, in summation, only defines America's bullying attitude towards other countries of the world in what they thought was the right move, to met out a properly so-called realist, approach to both security and political practice within the international political system, so as to be able to win the hegemonic race, which was their ultimate goal. And so their problem with Cuba was simply because Fidel Castro decided upon the Cuban Revolution to align Cuba with Soviet principles. Then America gets up and says, no way, we will not allow you become an extension of communism. Basically, this is the issue. So Cuba's rejection of certain proposals from the United States of America actually led to a lot of economic sanctions imposed on them since the 1960s till this present moment. As though that was not enough, the same United States of America got up and said that no, Cuba, among other humanitarian, human rights, and undemocratic accusations, was also further accused, all right, as one involved in state sponsorship of terror and terrorist activities. Well, these have not been largely given any meaningful substantiation by the United States of America, but they do allege that Cuba is a safe haven, okay, that harbors fugitives of terrorism and other criminals engaged in terrorist activities, and even financial and weaponry sponsorship to these terrorist organizations. As to which terrorist organization is on the table evidentially as being under the sponsorship of Cuba has remained a question on the table of policy, on the tables of scholarship, and within the scientific or even among practitioners for so many decades now. Now, in the absence of any proper evidence, for me, I think it is only proper for them to behave as they have done. Biden's action could then be seen as one suggesting a genuine step to vindicate observers who have been worried about America's posture towards Cuba. In any event, Cuba is growing and continues to grow with or without America's support in any way. Their sugar trade and several other economic sectors are doing well. For me, Cuba's contribution to the medical brigade in Ghana have contributed significantly to national primary health, administration. So you realize that the country Cuba have continued to do well within the international space and contributing its part to global solidarity with or without these sanctions. And so you realize that it, as though America only targeted Cuba just on grounds of ideological differences and their issues with the Soviet Union, now Russia. And so if Joe Biden is saying, look, let us get these people out of the list, I was thinking it should have been accompanied with cogent reasons that exonerates and vindicates the national integrity of Cuba. As to whether Trump, who actually relisted them some time back, will do same when he comes, is a matter I will not delve into now. It doesn't look like Donald Trump's foreign policy, trajectory has significantly changed from what we've known it to be. But what it means also is that we need to be able to understand that the current realignment of America to certain countries globally is a matter that is feeding directly into the pain they have caused themselves. What a lot of people don't realize is that the unjustified instigation of Ukraine to misbehave towards Russia is similar to the Cuban issue. But the reality is that after shaking the tables, the power balance hasn't shifted in the favor of the United States of America. The power balance seemed to have worked well economically and even politically for Russia. So you realize that in the area of food, in the area of energy, and even the petrochemical and petrodollar system, the dollarization regime, have suffered significantly, especially with the rising of new banking platforms and sophisticated other platforms by BRICS. The nations of BRICS have done their magic. And so every bit about their war signs failed them in the Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And so economically, America is suffering. And it is projected that America will actually become worse if things continue the way they are going. Heightening food prices, heightening energy issues will lead to, a break of the American economy. China is doing very well in substitute products to most of the goods and services that fetched money for, America. And now with this petrodollar system that has been broken by the energy policy of BRICS, and now the EU is taking cover by attempting an EU-BRICS energy relations, it tells you there will be a lot of problems. The EU-Sino energy policy too is another issue. So now America must be very worried, and rightly so. They are looking for straws to hold on to. And one of the ways to launder themselves, to wash themselves, to look a little better and reasonable within the international community is to begin to pretend to look good. I think this is the only motivation that I fed into Biden's decision to get Cuba delisted as a state sponsor of terrorism. But for me, he hasn't done anything too significant, because I believe Cuba has never been anyway. I believe Cuba hasn't done any of these things. So we will look at it and continue to monitor. But like I underscored, the contribution of Cuba to us, Ghana, and several other developing or least developed countries, health-wise. Yeah. And aside their medical brigade, a lot of our medical practitioners were either trained directly in Ukraine, even in recent times. It is in the administration of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. I have little knowledge about that. But in the earlier administration of President Mahama, I am witness to a number of Ghanaian students who still flew to Cuba to benefit medical training. Yeah. And same can be said of Russia in agriculture and medicine and several other fields. So I hold these countries dear, and I see them more democratic than America, who think they should hold any other person accountable for global democratic governance. We stand in solidarity with all those who stand with us when we were in trouble, or when we are in trouble, who stand with us genuinely. Right. And remember, this marked the basis for post-apartheid South Africa's relations with Russia. And Nelson Mandela has been very clear, and was very clear on this. I think, therefore, in my conclusion, my advice to us going forward and learning forward is to be mindful of those who were active participants of colonialism and even slave trade against Africa and against developing countries. Russia was really not one, in my opinion. I pray that in the era of neo-colonialism, they shouldn't be actively some. I'm beginning to get worried about their involvement in Sahelian security governance. But if that is the alliance, a new security partnership that will protect, or that will be the least of the devils for us, so be it. So I wish Cuba well. This is great news, and we thank Biden for the pretense. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. Honorable Yunus Afuseni has just joined us. Honorable, good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good.
Right, can we hear you on the situation in Cuba and the decision taken by the outgoing President of the United States?
Well, thank you so very much, and good morning to our viewers, and to my comrade Kwesi Pratt, and my brother Elvis Bota, and to you. Today I was wondering why you decided that you want to show us your biceps.
Now, they are pretty impressive, aren't they?
Yeah, I do not have significantly much to say in addition to what Elvis has said, except to say that it appears to me that what has just happened is very transactional. Very transactional. About 553 people were arrested consequent upon a demonstration in Cuba, and they have been kept all this while. Biden, through the Catholic Church, negotiated for the release of these 553 people. There's a condition for releasing them. He's also extended the olive branch of taking them off the countries sponsoring terrorism. It is not as if to say that Cuba has been sponsoring terrorism, but America has never been comfortable with Cuba, communist country, just at its doorsteps. You remember the missile crisis between the United States and Cuba, where America was very much concerned that Russian or Soviet missiles were going to be placed just next door its borders. And so, it did everything to prevent that. The policy of containment started during the time of Henry Kissinger, has been in place in the American foreign policy, has been part of the American foreign policy since that time, Henry Kissinger's time, where America has put in mechanisms, strategies to contain Cuba, and contain in such a way that Soviet influence and communist influence does not get exported into the United States. And so I see this, it's not the first time Barack Obama did the same. At that time he was criticized for doing that, even by the Cuban authorities. They thought that it was opportunistic because there were many things that clearly were affecting Cuba. They had embargoed Cuba, and almost crashed its economy, and then delisting it from the country sponsoring terrorism was not going to add much. We just hope that I see clearly, like I said last week, it appears to me that the global world is now coming to the realization that there are certain things that we must let go. If you say you are containing Cuba, and containing Cuba in such a way that you are wreaking economic havoc on the country, which havoc affects the people. Say you are fighting for the human rights of the people, and these people, even in the midst of emasculating the economy of Cuba, Cubans have stood up. Private healthcare is free in Cuba. Education is free in Cuba. In fact, Cuba has helped train many doctors, teachers for many countries that have been struggling. Yes, Cuba has part of its ideology a deep-seated understanding of the ravages of imperialism and colonialism, and so had decided, and even as a part of its foreign policy, to fight imperialism wherever they think imperialism is oppressing the people. So you could see Cuban influence in South Africa during the time of the apartheid regime. You could see Cuban influence in Angola and many other places. So maybe because they were fighting, they were freedom fighters who are elected, and even Cuban, you can still see Cuban influence in Latin America, trying to get the whole of the Latin American countries free. The reimposition of the reinsertion of Cuba into the list of countries sponsoring terrorism was consequent upon Cuba's support of Nicolas Maduro. America felt that no, it should not have supported. But Cuba is fighting for the liberation of the Latin American countries.
That's actually the reason for their accuse on them. It's because of their support for Latin America.
Yeah, so it's a good act. Transactional to the core, but it's a good act. Countries should decide what they want to do with their own sovereignty. Short of oppressing their own people, they should decide what to do with their own sovereignty. And Cubans have elected that they share in the aspirations of people who want to be free. And but Trump has warned especially his foreign secretary has already warned, Waltz has already warned that what Trump, Biden is doing, they will undo
it. That's actually been my worry too. Right, thank you very much. Mr. Pratt.
Yɛnto ayɛ nsɛm so no, Kwesi Pratt nso de nsɛm bi ato dwa a wɔkyerɛ sɛ economic broking of Cuba must come to an end. Na mepɛ sɛ bɛka me ho na yɛatie ne nsɛm no nkyerɛ mu.
Well, the removal of Cuba from the list of states sponsoring terrorism, the economic blockade against Cuba must come to an end. Because one, Cuba has never sponsored terrorism throughout its history. It has rather been a victim of terrorism sponsored by the United States of America. Secondly, almost the whole world, perhaps with the exception of Israel, insisted that Cuba should be removed from the list of countries sponsoring terrorism. So it's not surprising. This mechanism has been used by the United States of America as a means of strangulating the Cuban Revolution. In other words, Cuba does not serve as an example to the many countries around the world which are suffering the ravages of neocolonialism and US dictation. But it's not just placing Cuba on the list of terrorists, a country sponsoring terrorism. Cuba actually has faced a huge economic blockade, you know. For more than 60 years, Cuba has been under economic blockade. So this is an attempt to kill a revolution. This is an attempt to strangulate a country. This is an attempt of the US to impose its hegemony, not just on the Cuban people, but on countries like Ghana and all of us and so on. And that is why we have been persistent in insisting that Cuba should be removed from this list of countries sponsoring terrorism and also the blockade. Now, Blaise, I mean, this fight with Cuba that the US has been engaging is exceedingly preposterous. I mean, look at the size of the US, a country with nuclear weapons, you understand? A country this big, and sometimes it's even claimed that it's the biggest economy in the world and so on. Fighting against an island nation of 11 million people. Incredible. An island nation of 11 million people, whose resources, basically, its major resource is sugarcane. It doesn't make any sense at all. Now, the fact that the Cubans have managed to resist the oppression, the exploitation, and the hegemony of the US for 60 years says a lot about the resilience of the Cuban people, says a lot about their commitment to building a new society, you understand? Now, in spite of this blockade and all the machinations of the right-wing leadership of the United States of America, Cuba has achieved a lot. Cuba actively participated in the national liberation struggles in Africa. Indeed, the end to apartheid in South Africa, the consolidation of the independence of Angola and the independence of Namibia can, to a very large extent, be attributed to Cuba and its participation in these struggles. So, I mean, the defeat of the forces of apartheid in the Battle of Quito Carnaval paved the way for the consolidation of the independence of Angola, paved the way for the independence of Namibia, and paved the way for an end to apartheid. Now, beyond this, there are scores of countries around the world who continue to benefit from Cuban expertise. Cuba has a program which is managed by its company called La Biafon for the eradication of malaria around the world. I mean, they used to work in Ghana until we sabotaged it. Some people in government sabotaged it, you understand? So Cuba is committed to the eradication of malaria. Until recently, Cuba had close to 200 to 300 doctors working here in the Cuban Medical Brigade. Cuba has trained doctors from many countries around the world, and it will surprise you that even during the COVID pandemic, Italy, who is an European country, depended on Cuban assistance. You understand? So all of us, you know, feel very, very strongly that the aggression against Cuba ought to come to an end to enable the Cuban people, you know, advance their own causes and so on. Cuba built one of the most enviable health systems in the world, you know, providing free medical care to all its citizens. And the details sometimes are shocking. I mean, Honorable, I don't know if you have ever been to Cuba. You know, some of the details, when you are told, is shocking. For example, in Cuba, every citizen must have a thorough medical examination every year, free of charge. Okay. Now, for those who refuse to have this medical examination, their doctors are supposed to file a report on why they have not had the medical examination. If you are invited to have the medical examination and you refuse to go, you are actually compelled to have the medical examination free of charge. I mean, where in the world does this happen? You understand? So this is the system that the U.S. is trying to crash, and the U.S. won't succeed. It's obvious that it won't succeed. Of course, it is clear that when the Donald Trump comes into office, Cuba may be put back on this list. But what is interesting, in reaching this agreement for Cuba to be removed from this list, the U.S.'s demand was that 400 to 500 people were in Cuban jails, anti-government elements, people who actually organized to sabotage Cuba and so on, should be released from prison. The condition was not that Cuba should stop sponsoring any terrorist activity in the world. Do you understand what I'm saying? I mean, the whole condition was that release these people from prison. In any case, what has the interest as the U.S. got in freeing those particular people from Cuban jails? Look, whatever is done to Cuba, our solidarity will remain steadfast. We will give Cuba a full solidarity. And no matter what is done to the Cuban people, the worldwide revolt against oppression, against the imposition of neoliberal policies and so on, will continue. I mean, this is beating about the bush. This is not something which is going to succeed. And the earlier the United States of America and its allies realize that, you know, the worldwide revolution cannot be stopped, the better it will be for the whole world.
Thank you very much, Comrade Kwesi Pratt. We'll proceed to our next topic for conversation, but let me again remind you that I'm receiving text messages. Make sure you do well to send in your messages. I'll be more than glad to read them. Minority urges former officials to snub invitation. NPP rejects oral. Minority urges former officials to snub invitation. Now this was we played a video before the show started. I would say it was a prelude where the minority in parliament they held a press conference where they raised a number of issues in relation to the Operation Recover All Loot, of which Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa is chair. And then also they spoke about the vetting committee and then some of the fallout. They expressed their dissatisfaction about Honorable Bernard Anyafor's posture. According to them, it appears he was being protective of the ministerial nominees. But they have also urged their former officials to snub invitations from the oral team. The reason behind that, they believe that it is not grounded in, it has no legal basis, and so they should ignore. Let me start with Honorable Yunusa Hussaini on this particular subject matter. The minority's position on oral and some of the things that he has said in relation to the vetting committee. Honorable.
Okay. So the minority says they should, they are former appointees. The one who was speaking is not a former appointee, you see.
Gideon Boakun.
In the proper sense of it, he was just in the vice president's office. Spokesperson,
yeah.
And so, well, if he says that former appointees must not respond or ignore any invitation, he's entitled to say so because he might not be invited. He might not.
take his advice.
With their own risk.
Their own peril.
Yeah, so I mean, oral Operation Recover or Loot is an institutional structure or mechanism under the presidency, which is intended to gather evidence. It's an evidence gathering platform that has been put in place to track, identify, and gather evidence for other governmental bodies, and particularly the Attorney General's office, for the purposes of holding people accountable, people who have had questions, who have questions to answer on how they went about gathering that property. Now, Operation Recover or Loot has gained a respectable public acceptance. Why? Because we were all in this country under the 8-year rule of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. And we saw how they managed the affairs of this country, and particularly the prevalence of corruption. And evidence of that prevalence of corruption was that the corruption perception index, the clock of the corruption perception index broke down and just stayed at 43. And so there was no perceptible fight against corruption. Now, we had seen incidents of the PDS, okay, where a group of people just came together. When we had said, when under John Evans Atta Mills and John Dramani Mahama first term in office, the Americans had, through the Million Challenge account, extended money to us to try to revamp and remove the challenges and bottlenecks in the delivery of services in the energy sector, and particularly targeting the ECG, that is the Electricity Company of Ghana. We all saw the extent to which the processes had crystallized before the NPP came into office. And they came into office, bastardized it, gave it to their cronies. People collected monies, never accounted, and walk around the country with impunity. We've seen the grabbing of land. Land grabbing has taken another dimension. I mean, have you traversed the road to Ashoma using the transition road, where the new DVLA has come up? So many years ago, as Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, pressure was put on me by businessmen to give them those lands. I said, no. First, those lands serve very important purposes. You see that area, it's a marshy area.
Yeah.
So all the water coming down the hills, that is the first point at which nature itself will store the water and not let us be inundated by the floods. So that is why people elected to go there to do what? To farm. Because that soil, that area is rich in loamy soil because of the way the floods come, the rivers come down, the waters come down from the mountains. Oh, that area is gone. I always, my beloved Tamale, you go to Tamale, as if there was a scramble for land, like a reminiscence of the scramble for Africa. Every parcel of land, fallow land, the people just abhorred fallow land. They will go for it. And even petitioned markets and sold out. You talk about SML. Many. If I want to, I will mention too many. Nana Akufo-Addo did absolutely nothing. Yesterday, someone was telling me that the rate at which people are developing lands, I mean, those developers must be questioned where they have gotten the money, because Ghana appears to be a poor country. We are all on our knees. So John Dramani Mahama, in preparing the People's Manifesto, went round the whole country. And the people of this country said, all we want you to do, because we've seen that Nana Akufo-Addo will not hold his appointees accountable. All we want you to do is to hold these appointees accountable. Indeed, it is part of the laws of this country. It's there in the Constitution that if you suddenly become rich and you have not gone to school to become a doctor like Elvis, you suddenly become rich, and then your wealth cannot be supported by the salary, by your salary, and you cannot explain away why you suddenly became rich. The Constitution says that you are presumed to have acquired that wealth illegally. That's what the Constitution says. So oral is just to go around. Let's see. So get that evidence. So some people who have suddenly become rich. How they have become rich, we don't know. So we realize that you have X amount of money, like somebody told me yesterday. And many people, because of oral, you'll be amazed at the. I'm not a member of oral. I'm a member of the NDC. I don't hold any position in this government. But you'll be amazed at the number of people who call you daily to draw your attention to what they consider as malfeasance of the previous administration. Yesterday, while traveling to Accra, at the airport, I got a call. And somebody was drawing my attention to huge amounts of money being lodged in an account at a certain bank around Legon by people who are from a certain institution. He doesn't know where the money is coming from. He doesn't know whether the money belongs to that institution or to the people. He wants to see whether I could escalate this information to Ora. You get it? People are now emboldened. There's this issue about appointments that were made 2 days to the president exiting office, and just a few days ago, about 40 of them marched to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs reporting for work. That's so when were you appointed? 2 days to election, at most 1 week to election. There are people who have been lined up for interviews to get into places. You know, many, the stories are. So, oral as an evidence gathering platform is not investigating anybody, it's just collecting evidence. So, if they say the director of a state institution was part of the beneficiaries of land being and lying at cantonments, he's asked to come and confirm. They've gotten this information, whether indeed and in fact he is the person who has been named in the list they have as having acquired land at the cantonments. That one too is a problem. Yes, it's me. Oh, it's not me. They are not going to investigate you how you came back. They will submit the evidence to the Attorney General's office, and the Attorney General will conduct further. So this preliminary, conduct further investigations to see the manner, establish whether the acquisition was proper or not, whether the wealth gathered and acquired was lawful or not, whether the number of cars and what imported you paid duty on it, whether the waivers that were given you were proper or not. That's what the oral is doing. And then people are running heads over tails to try to demonize oral. We were in this country when Kufuor won. He's established committees to go around. And this man was part of those committees, the senior minister. Have you forgotten the era of the forensic auditing? It happened in this country. You'll be there, they'll come there, not from the Attorney General's office, Auditor General's office. They were coming to do forensic audit. That one, we didn't find anything wrong with it. People were hunted out of offices and hold before people to do for the purposes of forensic audit. We're not going to do any forensic audit. This one, they're not investigating anything. They are gathering evidence. And it's consistent with the law, consistent with the values of the Constitution. Accountability. Holding people accountable. If a regime fails, refuses, or neglects to hold its own people accountable, a succeeding regime, we all know what they will say about post-regime accountability. We are not surprised about them saying it's witch hunting. But Nana Akufo-Addo himself did not demonstrate any capacity to hold his people accountable. So how do we hold the people accountable? We let them go. The father for all philosophy died with Atta Mills. People must be held accountable in this country. And that's what Oral, as a preparatory institution, has been set up to do. It's under the office of the president.
Thank you very much.
Article 58 settles the matter.
Thank you very much.
Executive authority is vested in the president.
Right. I'll read a few messages. Good morning to you, Bless, and good morning to your great panelists. Bless, I think that it's about time we made a constitutional provision that will prevent presidents from taking last-minute decisions. The contribution of Cuba in terms of primary health care provision cannot be overemphasized. It is only just if Joe Biden had accompanied his removal of Cuba from the list with cogent reasons. Bless, permit me to use your podium to congratulate Honorable Ali Adolf, the Northern Regional Chairman of the NDC, for his ascension to the office of Regional Minister. My regards to Honorable Felix Ofosu-Kwakye, MP for Abra Asebu, Kwamankese constituency. Nazir Mohammed says, good morning, Bless, and to your panelists. So is the NPP saying the issues around PDS should be left as it is? The place Honorable mentioned where DVLA is now is really a natural water reservoir for a good reason. I feel sorry for the poor vegetable farmers thrown out. Hafiz Lord Gizi says, I like this panel, great mature team. Okay, Patrick Nketia says, good morning. Good morning, Patrick. Many thanks for doing the watching. Ado Shaibu says, good morning, my boss. Good morning, Ado. Thank you so much for tuning in. Mahamadou Fuseni says, good morning, Mr. Bless, and your lovely guests, especially Honorable Yunusa Fuseni. The NPP's concern about the oral team's work are confusing. Instead of focusing on the team's progress, they seem worried for no reason. A Dagbani proverb says, if you haven't stolen and they are shouting thief, do you run? This means that the oral team shouldn't let unfair accusations bring them down. The team's efforts should be supported and recognized, especially since they don't have any judicial powers. They are working hard to make a positive impact, and that's something to appreciate. It's also important for the oral team to expand their reach beyond the capital city. Visiting places like Tamale, Wa, and Bolgatanga would help them understand the country's needs and challenges better. This would enable them to tailor their efforts more effectively and address the concerns of Ghanaians. Thank you so much for your message. William Jikunu says, good morning, Bless. I don't know how and why the NPPs are afraid of oral. What are they hiding? Are they saying they will not accept invitation to oral? We wait and see what happens. But Mr. President, JDM, don't lose focus on corruption. Thank you so much for your messages. Keep them coming. Pedro says, the newspaper review segment of Good Morning Africa is live and clear inside Kumasi Town, so Kesben Junction. Thank you so much, and many thanks for tuning in. Good morning from Qatar. I love this discussion. Eric Baka sent this one all the way from Qatar. Thank you. Seidu John Paul says, good morning, Bless. Please extend my regards to your guest. I'd like to share my thoughts on oral. As a fact-finding committee, its purpose is to retrieve stolen assets for the state, demonstrating the president's commitment to transparency and accountability. I find it intriguing that the NPP and its members are expressing concerns about oral's operations. If the administration served with integrity, they should welcome this initiative. Instead, their resistance raises questions. I see it. If they've done nothing wrong, they should support oral's effort to uncover the truth. The committee's work is crucial in promoting accountability and recovering stolen assets for the nation's benefit. Alhaji Deja says, Good morning. I'm watching you live inside Tamale North Constituency. My regards to Chairman FK and Honorable Suyeni, MP for Tamale North Constituency. Take Ayao says, if you have not stolen, why should you be worried about oral? Okay, thank you so much. Finally, I'll read this one, which says that, good morning, bless. The NPP is exhibiting a bluff, if not arrogance. H.E. John Mahama appeared before a number of investigative bodies as a former president. Former appointees of the NPP can't run away from their criminal actions. They should not try their anger descending. They should not try to anger Ghanaians the more. Okay, Stephen Peng from WA sent to this one. Thank you, Stephen Peng. Right, let me come to Dr. Elvis Bota.
Bless. My position on oral and my position on any other thing that brings integrity in governance hasn't changed. It's always been clear that I will support oral, I will support any machinery that is intended to make governance, accountable and transparent governance work in our country. Anything that will put the fear of God in our appointees, in people in whom, you know, the state powers are actually given to exercise or to keep in trust for the goodness of the rest of society in Ghana, I will support it. You see, on the basis of this, I'm going to make a very critical analysis of oral. Oral is an operation. It's a project. It's not an institution. NPP can be so daft sometimes. I don't understand this, my party. NPP can be damp. See, this is what happens when you appoint elements who don't even understand anything and don't read. Oral is not an institution. For you to be raising issues about its legality and legitimacy. Having the Constitution of the Republic of Ghana guaranteed, even for civil arrest. Bless you and I. If we know that Mr. A or B stole something belonging to the state, we are enjoined by the laws of Ghana to actually go conduct an arrest, carry the person to the police station, and actually tell them what we know as pointers to them adducing evidence to establish culpability. If we behave that way, are we police? No, blessed. Answer me. The media too is not helping matters. If you and I behave that way, are we police? Does that mean we've arrogated to ourselves the powers of police? No. So this is what happens when you have a political party that came to power, forgot they have the men, ignored those from academia, intellect, technocrats who have knowledge, ignore us and bring elements who don't read to come and occupy positions. Their whole plan is to wake up every morning, sit in Land Cruiser, drive to office, catch the cameras, then psychophans supporting them will put their pictures on social media and start giving them titles and praising them. That was the administration Nana Akufo-Addo ran. And that is why we are in this situation. Otherwise, if the whole plan of oral was to transition into a criminal investigation institution, we would have had moral grounds to talk about it and to question the legality of say. Are you understanding me? We would have had moral basis to even question the integrity of the people seated in that institution. Honorable Yusuf Husseini said something about wealth, and I will come to that, but let me deal with my party first. A northern brother of mine gave a very critical and philosophical northern proverb. If we sit in this room and they come in here searching for a thief, bless, will you run away? No. If you haven't stolen anything? No. You will not run away. Immediately they are hunting witches and you go to hide. You are a witch. If you have nothing to hide, you must have nothing to fear. Yeah. Rollins said this. At least I didn't hear him, but I read it somewhere. I'm one of the few who read. Let me brag some more. You understand? If you have nothing to hide, you must have nothing to fear. So, what is the problem with the NPP? If indeed we were correct in telling Ghanaians that we run a transparent government, we run a progressive government, and we run a government that spearheaded genuine concern for the plight of Ghanaians and developed Ghana. We use the resources well. Our president is on record to have always bragged that he is not corrupt and he's never been corrupt. Our presidential candidate hasn't been corrupt before and promised never to be corrupt in his own ways. Then why are we having a problem with investigation, with or without the team being legitimate? Why are my people, former appointees of the government of my party, come and explain to us, party faithful, we want to know from you why you are running. The other day I heard, who was he? Was it Afenyo at the vetting committee, asking very intelligent questions, but later behaved in a way that disappointed me and walked out. Then fast forward, Gideon, all right? Now Honorable Gideon, what's the full name? Buaku. Did a press conference, I don't know whether that was yesterday. Very busy talking about things and the fact that we won't go to oral and the fact that he levied this, he levied that, accusing the new administration of their willingness to withdraw e-levy. Isn't it? I hope I'm correct. Yes. Then I was surprised. You were economic advisor and spokesperson to Bawumia when you went to UPSA and told Ghanaians you will scrap e-levy should Bawumia become president. If Bawumia hasn't become president and John Mahama has become president and wants to do what Bawumia intended doing by scrapping e-levy, why would you be against it? You can only be stupid to be against it. That's sorry to use that word on the platform, but you can to be charitable is just stupidity. It's just stupidity. You have a benevolent spirit coming to crack your palm kernel for you, and you are angry. So you see, when you behave this way, it puts critical minds to the understanding that you are hiding something. If not, you should not be worried. I would have been so proud as an NPP member, all right,
if they are elected,
to have our people say that, look, all appointees under President Nana Akufo-Addo come together and do a press conference that, look, we are hearing of Operation Retrieve or Loot. We who held offices from this period to that period, we are available today, we are available tomorrow. If you think we've done anything wrong, come, we are available. That would have been it. Bless, that would have been it. Integrity would have spoken. Confidence would have come up. But you see, we have complicated matters for ourselves. And me, the appointees of Nana Akufo-Addo are the last I want to speak for. Now, let me speak for Ghana. It's good to fight corruption. And I applaud President Mahama for this giant step. However, there are critical issues to raise. And that has nothing to do with the legality or otherwise of this. Because, like we've heard, they are on a fact-finding mission. When they get their evidence, they will now have basis to hand over credible complaints to the relevant state investigative institutions to take on prosecutorial actions from there. That is the primary understanding of oral. But there is a fundamental problem, and this is not about just oral. There's a fundamental problem about corruption investigation in Ghana. And it's an indictment on our presidents. Anytime our presidents set out to investigate corruption, you realize that it is not done wholeheartedly. Let's pardon President Mills and deal with Akufo-Addo and President Mahama and the one who left, Akufo-Addo, right? Akufo-Addo's means of tackling corruption was through the office of the special prosecutor. Then he made a fuss of himself by bringing Martin Amidu, a man who obviously was disgruntled at Mahama and his administration, to come and sit there. In other words, the motive of Nana was that Martin Amidu used that office to embarrass appointees under Mahama or Mr. Mahama himself and leave out his appointees. So any story or report that comes about the appointees of President Akufo-Addo himself, what he did was never to put them before the OSP. What he did was to form committees in the nature of oral at the office of the presidency to clear them. Today they have the moral grounds to come and talk about the legitimacy of oral. So when you are damp, this is the manifestation of it. Now, it tells you the man wasn't genuine in corruption fight. Mr. Mahama have come. Clearly, he's learnt lessons in opposition. He's learnt lessons in the entire essence of failure in life is to learn from it. So I salute President Mahama. He has proven to be a worthy son of the North. But my problem with oral is that there would have been a feather to that cap if the president had even mandated oral to gather evidence, all right, not only about appointees of the former administration of Nana Akufo-Addo, but in some instances, certain areas of concern about his own previous administration that people were expecting Akufo-Addo to investigate, and that didn't happen. He should have extended the mandate of oral to deal with issues like that. That way, his own current appointees whom he's making will know that, Massa, if we joke, this man is not going to even deal with, he's not going to play with us. That would have been the height of corruption fight for us. Now, in that sense, oral is not just only seen as a machinery to fight corruption, but also a machinery to instigate governance integrity and transparency. I am inviting President Mahama to the fullest consideration of this proposal to extend the mandate of oral to even previous administrations. There is no limit to crime, is there? Now, a fundamental issue in corruption, which must be investigated by well-meaning bodies like oral, okay, should also come on the basis that we are minded whom we put there. Don't bring people whom, in the digging of files, some section of society will have cause to worry about their own integrity. Let me now use this opportunity in 2 minutes to analyze something about oral. A serious concern some people have. I don't know. Constitutionally, I don't think we really have, in our criminal jurisprudence, I don't think we really have stringent laws to investigate unquestioned wealth in Ghana. It's one of the reasons Cecilia Dapa will go away with what we all know. But at least the Constitution, as Honorable Yusuf Hussein said, have given reason for us to doubt your wealth and to have grounds to label you as a thief, to start investigations from there. If your wealth cannot be supported by your earnings, and we all know for so many centuries, manna has stopped falling. So then, on those bases, we have known people, both in the previous Mahama administration and in the Eastward Akufo-Addo administration, who just finished national service. Relevant work experience, if you want to dig their files, they never went beyond national service and ended up in politics and are very rich people today. Where from the money? Is oral taking advantage of this provision in the Constitution to deal with things like that? I can mention a lot of names in both the NDC and the NPP. We just finished national service and today we are multimillionaires. Remember, Rawlings had cause to talk about how people like Felix Kwache bought houses. I don't know. It is only alleged. Others have said Okujeto Blocker, who is now the chairman for oral, did only national service before, going in. Others are even challenging whether the national service was completed. I don't know. But is it the case? You see, you come into the NPP, I can list a lot of them. National service, maximum formal work experience. We don't know the company you own and how well the company is doing. Yet, you are the ones investigating corruption. If Oral must be a legitimate body, let us go back into all of these things. Right. Finally, and I'm coming back to warn the NPP. You see, we are too dumb. We are dumb. Oral is not only, I'm telling my party, Oral is not only investigating corruption. This arrogance the NPP is putting against Oral, we are falling into the trap of the NDC. Oral is also a political machinery intended to attack the credibility of the NPP and to criminalize the party as a whole. To let Ghanaians appreciate the NPP as an infrastructure syndicate of crime. So that going into 2028, we will even lack credibility to do any serious campaign talking about corruption of this current NDC government, if any will even come up. Are you getting it? So the NPP, we must realize that Oral is a political vehicle intended to drive home the fact that we are corrupt, partly because the NDC is likely going to run into candidate crisis in elections 2028. If they don't manage their internal affairs well, there will be candidate crisis in the NDC. And that can be a way for the NPP, depending on who becomes candidate, to win the 2028 elections. Very, very possible. So the only formidable way to kill the seed before it grows is to ensure that from now till 2028, investigations will be over by 2027. So by 2027, 2028, serious prosecutions. The party will be running helter-skelter to defend our former appointees. And in so doing, you have no credible basis to talk about corruption of the Mahama administration as basis for Ghanaians to reconsider you. This is what the NPP is not reading. And we are not reading this because of the kind of people we have at the headquarters. We are not knowing this because nobody is being scientific about our approach. Election Review Committee, you put an 81-year-old man, Mark Okoye, who is part of the problem of the party, and so pretended on the defeat of his son, Adome Kwabenya,
thank you very much,
to be the chair of an election review committee. How do you expect them to reason out things like what I am saying?
Right. Thank you very much.
Let's say that the stupidity will cause us to lose again in 2028.
Right.
What kind of political...
Thank you very much, Elvis Bota. We have tons of messages from our viewers across the world. Good morning, sir. Oral or no oral, NPP will account for the looting of state lands, destruction of forest and water bodies, and the political killings in Nigeria, Techiman, Boko, etc. Were they backed by laws to rob bondholders of their funds? Did they have legal backings to arm party thugs with guns and military uniforms to shoot citizens at polling stations? Was the legal basis for NPP foot soldiers to snatch cars and houses from past officials? Was it legal to engage and proceed? Was it legal to engage and proceed on leave against people like Mr. Domlovu who were locked out of their offices? The culture of impunity is over, so the law will work since they are not above the law. Ken Williams sent this one. Thank you, Ken Williams, for your message. Good morning, Pan-African TV. This is Abbas from Savlugu. Okay, kindly ask Elvis Bota to take the oral team to court. All right.
What have I done? I'm even telling oral team. In fact, COVID funds. The ones NPP said constituency whatever. You remember those audio?
I remember.
Please, for the
yes,
records.
I salute my uncle, Honorable Yunusa Fuseni. The era of father for all is over. It's now time for accountability. Okay, thank you very much. Bless. Good morning to you and your guest. NPP's posture that sent them to opposition miserably, still following them in opposition. Oral should work hard to identify all the loots. Jonah from Kumbungu. Thank you, Jonah, for your message. Bless. If NPP former appointees are Ghanaians, they should refuse invitation from Oral and see what will happen to them. We are not going to entertain any politician in this country. NPP think they are entitled and own Ghana better than any person. They should try it. Mutala Brahma sends this one. Thank you, Mutala Brahma. Greetings to you and your panelists. I just can't understand why the NPP is afraid of Oral. Mr. President, send all of them to BNI and let them smell pepper. We are tired of your immaturity. Pablo TTH sent this one. Thank you, Pablo. In my local dialect, there's a proverb that says, if you didn't eat your in-laws oil, why should you be afraid of running diarrhea? Okay, thank you very much. Good morning. Thanks for your good work. In fact, I know you don't. Okay, all right. Thank you. The rest of your message isn't so clear. Good morning, blessed. Thanks for blessing our morning with such exemplary panel. Thumbs up to my brother, Dr. Bota. Happy New Year to you, Ken Sniper from Nadoli. Thank you, Ken. I'll read two more. ORA will work and work again if the NPP like it or not. It will work for the benefit of all Ghanaians. Kufuor brought fast-track High Court and it worked. Kufuor brought OSP and it is working. Why is the NPP afraid of ORA? From Amos in Asimfusu. Let me read this final message. Bless. Has Afenyo Markin lost his way to the Supreme Court or the High Court? If the NPP feels ORA is operating illegally, the courts are waiting. Ghanaians voted them out because of their arrogant behavior. Instead of learning in opposition, they are even annoying us the more. Sami and Adenta, thank you, Sami, for your message. Comrade Pratt.
Well, first of all, in all honesty, I don't see anything wrong with the statement which was made by the minority. And our brother, Honorable Inusaf Hussein, is here and is a lawyer. Even when the police has formally charged you with a crime, you have a right not to cooperate. So nobody is under obligation to respond to calls, even by the constitutionally established institutions for investigation, prosecution, and so on. You can refuse to cooperate. It's the right of every citizen to refuse to cooperate. So if they are refusing to cooperate, no problem. But sometimes when you refuse to cooperate, it's at your own detriment. You understand? So if former appointees, members of the minority and so on, are advised not to cooperate, and they agree not to cooperate, they must realize that it may be at their own detriment. Now, what is ORA? All kinds of definitions have been given to ORA and so on. My understanding is completely different. Here is a president-elect. He has so much to do. And he himself has promised that within the first 120 days, he will do so much, appoint his cabinet, abolish e-levy and so on, all within 120 days. So he's overburdened, you understand. Now people are coming to him with all kinds of complaints about state capture, about embezzlement and so on. He says, look, I've not even been sworn into office. I need time to focus attention on all the things that I'm doing. So this 5-member committee received the complaints and compiled them so that when I finally assume office, the relevant constitutional state institutions can deal with them. What is the problem with this? How is this illegal or legal? This is the president setting up a committee to handle a brief. President-elect, not even the president.
Yes.
To handle a brief. That's all oral is. Oral is not an investigative body. Oral is not going to prosecute anybody. Oral is not going to usurp the powers of the Attorney General or the police or Yoko or any of them. President-elect simply says that all this information which is coming to me, please direct it to this 5-member committee. That's all. So I don't understand why people are shouting and jumping over themselves and so on about the legality or illegality of ORA. It doesn't really matter. You understand? Now, in any case, whether you appear before ORA or you don't appear before ORA, it's neither here nor there. The allegations which are being made, the evidence which is being gathered, will finally be submitted to either the police, the Attorney General's Department, Yoko, or some other body, OSP. And at that point, you would have to decide whether you appear before them or not. And the law will take its course. And those who are guilty will be dealt with according to law. Those who are innocent will go back home. What's the problem? What's all this noise? You understand? Now, there has been issues which has been raised about suspicions, and mere suspicions and allegations about some members of the ORA team. That they themselves, if we look at them, they may not be too clean. You understand? Those are suspicions, those are allegations which are improving. You understand? And if the minority feels that its members, its party loyalists and so on, should not respond to ORA because ORA is not constitutional and legal and so on, they should also be minded about using rumor and mere allegations to judge people who are doing a public duty. You understand? So I think that both sides need to be guided by true principles of equity, true principles of law, and true principles that emanate from the Constitution. You understand? And if both sides are guided by that, fine, we'll move on. Now, the other aspect of this press conference, which was held by the minority, which is completely shocking. I mean, I'm so shocked I can't believe it. That they actually held the press conference and asked the question that if you abolish e-levy, how do you feel the whole in national revenue? And surprise, surprise, the man who was addressing the press conference was the spokesperson of the Bawumia campaign, which also promised to remove e-levy. So when Dr. Bawumia was promising to remove e-levy, they didn't think about how to fill the hole which was going to be created. I mean, what a joke. Yes, I can't understand some of these things. And then, to make matters worse, it says that, look, if you remove e-levy and betting tax and all those things, you shouldn't introduce any other tax. Where is this coming from? The argument against e-levy is that it adversely affected the living conditions of the vulnerable people in society. By implication, what those who are saying that we should remove e-levy are saying is that we need to reappraise the whole tax system and come up with one which does not punish ordinary vulnerable people, but follows the true principle of taxation, which is to take from those who have more than necessary and use it to serve the interests of those who have nothing. So yesterday I was making the point, for example, that look, you go and impose e-levy and it affects everybody, vulnerable people, the unemployed and so on. Why don't you remove e-levy and begin to look at other areas? And I was making the point that, look, gun license, for example, for a whole year costs 12 cedis. Who are the people who have gun licenses? They are the rich. They are the powerful, they are the influential in our society and so on. So remove e-levy and increase gun license to 2,000. You understand? In order to generate resources which will make up for what we are losing from abolishing e-levy. We live in a country where people live in $1 million houses. How much do they pay as property rates? You review that, change the property rate regime so that you can get a lot more and so on. So this never, you can't charge any more taxes and so on. It's extremely childish, extremely childish. Does not address the real issues and so on. It's populist. You understand? Now, for me, another aspect of this press conference which shocked me a great deal is the denial that there's a direct correlation between revenue and expenditure. Because the minister designate for finance is reported to have said that they will curb expenditure, as a means of plugging the hole. And the minority is saying that is impossible. What do you mean? I mean, revenue and expenditure cannot be mixed. If you are earning 10 cedis and you are spending 15 cedis, you have a problem. You understand? You have a problem. There's a deficit. So if you're earning 10 cedis and you're able to cut your expenditure from 15 to 9 cedis, the situation improves. You make a savings of 1 cedi. You remove the deficit. So there's a direct correlation between revenue and expenditure. But even beyond that, who says that society must necessarily charge taxes in order to generate resources? Who says that? And I tell the story of my visit to the Democratic People's Republic of Korea in 1981, when the government there actually announced that they were abolishing taxes. And it's very simple. Okay, you take the worker, the government employs you and pays you 15 cedis a month. And the same government taxes you 5 cedis, takes it away. Which actually means that the money that the government is giving you is 10 cedis. So why doesn't the government just give you 10 cedis and avoid this thing about taxation and so on? Just common sense, you understand? So this insistence on taxes as a way of generating revenue and so on is ridiculous, you understand? Besides, if government is actually engaged in the production and distribution of the goods and services that society needs, that itself generates resources. Beyond taxation, it generates resources and so on. So these pedestrian arguments, I think they should be packed aside. Look, President John Dramani Mahama has promised to investigate corruption. He's promised to investigate malfeasance, of public officials and so on. If you haven't taken any state resources, why are you running and crying and so on? Why? You understand? Then there's another thing, and Alaji, I want you to assist us on this. I mean, including prominent lawyers, it's not just the minority, and prominent lawyers are saying that, you can never establish a tribunal. Establishing a tribunal is against the law and so on. And I'm sitting back and I'm wondering, well, where are these people coming from? Go and read the Constitution. The Constitution says that we should establish tribunals. This is the Constitution, black and white. The Constitution says that we should establish regional tribunals. I'm not so sure, I think it's Article 26 or so. You understand? The Constitution itself says that you should establish tribunals. Now, what is happening is that these people are dwelling on the word tribunal, not substance. Okay? Because in 1982, 83, 84, thereabout, we established tribunals which denied people the right of appeal and so on. And the tribunals actually, some of them actually misbehaved substantially. They think that just the mere mention of tribunal, especially if you add public to it, discredits the system. That's all they're doing. There's a history to it. That's all they're doing. Now, if you set up a tribunal which respects the rights of people who are brought before it as well, what is the problem? And indeed, every court is a tribunal by definition. Every court is a tribunal by definition. So what is this fixation about tribunals and people swearing and so on? The Constitution says that we should establish tribunals. Are you saying that we should violate the Constitution? I don't know what these people are talking about. And I don't know this fixation. What they actually have is a fixation for the word tribunal. And they are disturbing our ears with this. What is this? I think it's Article 126.
1261, 1262.
Yeah.
126. Yes. 142 is that regional tribunals.
Yeah, regional tribunals.
Regional tribunals, but 126. 126 clause 1 and clause 2.
And actually, there's a provision also Alaji, there's a provision in the Constitution which deals with reports of the Auditor General.
Yes.
Yes,
And it says that we have to establish a tribunal to deal with reports and actually insists that the members of the tribunal ought not be professional legal people.
Yes.
Or that we should have people on the tribunal who are not professional legal people.
Yes.
You understand?
Yes.
Now, look at the process of removing a Chief Justice from office. The 1992 Constitution says that to remove a Chief Justice from office, Chief Justice, the President has to appoint a 5-member committee. That 5-member committee should have 2 of its members as judges of the Superior Court. Okay? The 3 other members, they shouldn't be lawyers. They shouldn't be members of the Council of State. They shouldn't be parliamentarians and so on. Is that not the same principle of the tribunal? In any case, in our laws, everywhere, United States of America, Britain, and so on, you have the juror system. That's not how they call it. The juror system.
Even in high-profile criminal.
You know, where lay persons who have never been to law school and so on sit and decide the guilt or innocence of persons who are brought before the court. So what are they talking about? What are they talking about? Oh, my brother. You know, some of these people, they actually make you sick. What is this? They haven't read the Constitution. These people who are talking, they haven't read the Constitution. They don't know what the Constitution says. And they don't know about normal, regular practice in the judiciary. They don't know. Wow.
Ora is not going to try people, or the Attorney General is not going to try people through kangaroo courts. No. Through the established institutions. And when we were talking about oral and prosecutions, many of us immediately went to the Constitution and realized that there was even an institutional mechanism there to look at those things. Right. So.
Right, our time is up. I'll take time to read a few messages before. Good morning, blessing. Panelists, Uncle Kwesi, you have made my day with your super submission. They can start shooting themselves before Oral starts shooting at those nation destroyers. Margaret from Pong Tamale. Thank you, Margaret. Dr. Elvis Bota is a World Bank of Knowledge, critical thinking and analysis. Whilst Kwesi Pratt is an institution of knowledge. For the past 8 years, NPP's leadership and appointees have shared every gain of our toil as a country, for which reason they fear Oral. JM must subject them to account. Kindly tell Dr. Bota that I need him as a mentor. Okay, he didn't mention. Bless. My name is Emmanuel, watching you live from Techima. I really enjoy your panel's conversation, especially Elvis. If NPP had listened to his brilliant ideas and others, they wouldn't have lost the election like this. Anyway, continue to bring your intelligence to JDM to build our country, Ghana. Elvis, you are my mentor. God bless you. Okay, thank you. Good morning, sir. Just enjoying your show from Navrongo. The old ladies become uncomfortable when dry bones are mentioned. Ora has come to stay. Fred sends this one. Good morning, Bless. Please tell the NDC leadership to advise the vetting committee chairman to learn from the past chairman. Ghanaian voted out NPP with anger. He shouldn't let us regret voting for the NDC. Thank you. Felix from Jirapa. Thank you, Felix. Good morning to the people of Jirapa in the Upper West region. This one here says that please tell Mahama that we voted for him because we want him to take all that belongs to the nation and give it back to the nation. I don't know why we even vote these people. They are all the same. Okay, thank you very much for your message. And this one here also says that good morning, Pan-African TV. NPP's big wigs must seriously be investigated and, if possible, prosecuted. They have ruined the economic future of this nation. NPP is full of arrogance and pride. They must not come near power again. I can't think far when I hear and see people still defending the NPP. They must not escape Oral. I wish Oral the best of duty execution. You sent this one from Wa. As for your name, it's too big for me to mention. Bless, are you sure the man in suits is an NPP man? Because all right, Mazu from Roäst sent this one. Okay, thank you very much. Elvis, they want to find out if you are truly NPP. Right, let me do a few more messages, then we can call it a day. This one here says that greetings. David Blinate says greetings. It's called jury service. Every citizen is mandated for it. Okay. David One Kala says Dr. Bota needs security. Okay. John Kennedy Tayman says, good morning, bless, and the pan of the NPP is confused, and they will be confused the more because soon and very soon their party will be no more. In fact, their numbers in parliament will be reduced by half in next election. True and poor politicians, shame on them. Okay. Stephen says, Uncle Kwesi, I live in the UK and I'm not a lawyer, but I've been on a jury on 2 occasions. Okay. William Monday Jikunu says, Mr. Bless, I'm appealing to President JDM to always invite Mr. Kwesi Pratt as part of his advice team. He has a lot of opportunities and knowledge the country can tap from. It should make him a member of the Council of State. Well, we have heard you. Alaji Hamza from PENDREAM, and this will be my final message for the morning. Good morning, my brother. First and foremost, what is the difference between oral and if you see something, say something? For God's sake, oral is all about accountability. The Office of Accountability was set up under President Akufo-Addo. So what is wrong about this? The looting of state lands and is becoming one too many, and the earlier something is done about it, the better. My brother, come to Tamale, see for yourself. State lands belonging to Tamale West Hospital has been sold out to NPP party functionaries like there is no tomorrow. In any case, were they not security agencies when the Delta Force were beating and sacking people from the offices in Kumasi? They should give us a break. All right, thank you very much, Alhaji Hamza from PENDREAM. On that note, we call it a day. I want to thank my guests, the Honorable Yunusa Fuseni, Dr. Elvis Bota, and Comrade Kwesi Pratt for your time this morning. Very, very grateful. And to our cherished viewers, thank you so much for always having our time. Without you, we would not even exist. So we want to thank you so much for always tuning into the show. The Friday edition comes on tomorrow. Make sure you do all to tune in. Until then, do have a pleasant day. Bye-bye.
Subscribe to channel no. Like na share jumadi no ma afoforo ensa enkabi.
Dedi kama amena PENDREAM TV ase. Na so far so good. Say open online portal e wo Ghana. Nipa share, nipa follow, nipa comment here. To my best of knowledge, without any biases, PENDREAM TV.